Okay guys, just a brief rundown. There's a load of AUDIOSCAPE things here. The wonderful team at AUDIOSCAPE let me try these out. I've not done any audio examples. Well, I have for myself, but they're not within 0.1 dB and they're all stems of my own and stuff. If you know me or you live near here, come down to the studio, I'll play them all day for you. Straight off the bat, I'm going to say it, the AUDIOSCAPE clones that I've tried are so far the best clones. The most useful clones that I've used so far. I've used other companies' stuff, and I don't think they do much. And I usually go for things that do big moves, or they give me an extra 20% out of the box, which a lot of these are doing. But I'll tell you my favourite units, right? So actually, no, I won't. Yeah, no, I will. I'll do it right at the start. You'll go. My favourite ones. So if there's a bias, I haven't bought any of this. I haven't bought any of these units. No one's paying me to say any of this. I'm not going to slag anything off that is unfair. So yeah, basically this DA-3A I think is very good. I think it sounds really good. It's a very useful tool, and I use the ASA-3A all the time on electric guitars and on acoustic guitars in the box UAD plugin, and I think they sound really, really good. And versus the original audio, what this seems to do is kind of go, like for example, acoustic body, it kind of brings the body into sustain up like that, goes up, and then sort of feels like it's more intimate, but also creates like this kind of like bigger sound, and not like just low mid like boxy stuff. It actually feels like it's going doing something useful to the sound, and also adds a bit of top end kind of like sheeny stuff, but not like rubbish sizzle from like an awful, I don't know, like a rubbish valve or something, or like a cheap top end, like a digital thing. It sounds like it just adds a bit of like transient stuff to like electric guitars and acoustic guitars, and they always sound better. I don't know what I'm doing with compression. Basically, -3, -5 is what I usually aim for in the box, and it always sounds pretty good. That does the same thing, except it makes it a little bit wider, and it also brings it all together a little bit more. And that's one of my favourite things here. It's got like a link function, and there's like this high frequency kind of detect circuit thing. I kept messing with the wrong gain and reduction, and like treating them like this, gain and the peak reduction here, and kind of like swapping between. But basically that sounds class, get that, no messing about. They're well cheap as well, versus like originals, it's ridiculous. This spring reverb as well was my, so that's my third favourite of them. This is my second favourite, randomly, just because I write songs. This tech stuff is like wonderful and everything. I'm really nerdy into it all, but there's enough people to tell me I'm wrong about something online, so that's wonderful. But this, musically, it's just a proper fun thing that you don't get from plugins. Like spring reverbs and the sustain and overtones you get. It's like if anyone plays piano, or just an open, like an open kind of an open tuning on a guitar or something like that, and you kind of open it up and just like like a dadgad or something like that. If anybody knows, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, better example. Sustain, keyboard, pedal, turn it off, off, it goes, all these overtones, even if they're out of key with like the vocal or with whatever you're whacking it through. Like I've got this Neve console, and I basically run it through the reverb sends on here, and I threw it through this, and it always sounds really good. And because you can kind of EQ it, you probably can't see this, but there's like EQ points right across the middle. And other than the fact you have to kind of like match the input and output, which is a bit of a faff, the EQ bits themselves actually do something. They're not just there just like, oh god, it's doing a bit of this, a bit of that, can't really hear it. And they kind of do really good stuff, and it's dark and crunchy. And I wrote notes down. Here we go. Tempered reverb with springs, XL-305R. I'm presuming it's reverb. I think it's built on an old version of something. I also downloaded their 14-day trial of their reverb AUDIOSCAPE. I think it's by Kive Audio in a conjunction with the guys. And it's really cool. It just does that whole thing where the overtones are like constantly ringing in and out, and the decay time is perfect. It's so good because it's not like an algorithm or any sort. It's just doing like, it's well hard to describe, but if you listen to a spring reverb, it just does the thing that plugins don't do, in my opinion. And it musically always sounds really good. It sounds a bit darker and a bit crunchier, and at first I was like, this sounds weird. Sounds a bit distorted, not very clear, whatever. Listen to the plugin versions. The AUDIOSCAPE Kive audio thing, their version of their 305, when you switch it down to their old version, I think that sounds really cool. But they're always a bit brighter, and they feel like, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, Kemper amps, digital amps, when they take like a snapshot of one thing at one time and they give you that sound and that's it. It kind of just goes, this is your sound, and that impulse is just the one thing. All your audio goes to that impulse and just hits it, and you've got the same decay time, the same feel. It just doesn't feel the same. But when stuff hits this spring, you can literally just tap it on the side, and it kind of has this natural kind of, I don't know, like it's like a wash and a sustain and a decay, and it all sort of blends and melds and glues perfectly. And then you find that kind of darker, crunchier, kind of almost kind of distorted thing going on. You can drive hard or you can drive subtly as well. I've seen success with both versions, and you can kind of sit it behind the mix and you don't have to do anything to it. You literally can EQ it on the way in and be like, this is a different type of reverb. Anyway, I've got a Bricasti M7 and everyone's like, oh, it's the best thing ever, amazing, wonderful, great. Yeah, it sounds, there's loads of different settings. This does like one thing and you can EQ it and it's musical, it feels like an instrument, so I like it. So that's my second favourite thing. ASA-6A, really good. Based on this RCA, BC, BA, 6, 7, A5, whatever. I don't care. I'm never going to try one, and even if I did, I'd have to give it service through its teeth. All the valves have probably been replaced or serviced or something's wrong with it. Anyway, it opens like an oven. Like that. See? What do you think? This is my number one thing from AUDIOSCAPE. They've got loads of other bits and they're all fine and lovely and everything like this, but this really changes the sound. And it kind of does the thing that upscales. If anybody has tried loads of outboard gear that sounds really good with fancy valves, it kind of does this thing where it goes from like 1080 to 4K. And you might be like, what's that in technical terms? Show me a graph, it's really important. No, it isn't. What it does, you turn this on, got a little button inside, turn it on, boom, amazing, top 5. Love it. It's a scary close though, don't get me started. Anyway, so the stock mode, here, you do that, kind of put it to wherever the threshold is to be, kind of put medium slow, attack and release, and bring it back, and then put it, so it's kind of doing that like, I don't know, 1176 thing, where you kind of have like a 3 and a 5, whatever, right? Job done, fine, no worries. Step it out, the stock there, and the stock there, so that stock bypasses the high pass filter, so you're not going to 120 hertz, you're just going straight in, like full fat as it were, and then that sounds like a specific sound, so it has like this kind of clean, sheeny top end LA-2A thing, which I think sounds really bright, or at least mine sounds really bright. And then, so that's a tonal character that I think's really good. And because it's like this very new thing, and it's going through like valves and transformers and doing whatever it's doing there. From a technical point of view, I've no idea, don't care. Well, I do care, but do you care? Who knows? Anyway, what it does is the clean sound kind of gives you this one entire sound, which sounds like you've made the mic a little bit more expensive. It's a more interesting mic all of a sudden, and the S's and T's and stuff come out just boom, just like really upscaled is like the best thing I can sort of call it, and it gives you this kind of this top end sheen that I think's really good. So I've just written some notes down. It sort of saturates the bottom end and gives that thickness. Yeah, so that's kind of what, like a load of the AUDIOSCAPE stuff seem to have this signature thing where the low end is like really big. Seemingly on nearly everything, the low end gets bigger. I don't know if that's a transformer thing, I don't know if that's a preference thing, I've no idea. But that's what I found through basically all of them. Not in a negative way at all, usually in a focus way or like kind of a low shelf lift, whatever. But anyway, basically you can get like a really clear, thick sound with loads of transient top end, and it sounds like really good, really like it. Anyway, conversely to that, throw it into the high pass, this is my favourite thing. Throw it into the sidechain high pass filter, so it's got a 120, and then you go and you basically do this kind of like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever it is, yeah, 2 p.m, and then like 9 a.m, attack and release, right? And then bring this into double mode, so like overboard. I think the double mode is the Fairchild 670, and I think the single is the Altec something. Have you ever read that somewhere, or I'm talking nonsense? And you can have off, which is just passing audio through the tubes, why you'd want to warm them up. I really want warm audio. What is the sound of that? But anyway, I wouldn't be surprised though, because the valves and transformers and stuff in this thing, regardless of the compression itself, are doing this thing that kind of feels like it's like polishing everything and making it all a bit more 3D and giving you a better set of speakers. You go, oh, this sounded all right, and then you go, and it kind of clears it out and brings everything up, and it just sounds better always. Then you have to work out the compression. I really like this VU meter as well. It kind of moves slightly differently to the VUs that I'm used to. The super like crazy ones, or the tube tech ones, or like the Teletronic stuff. a little bit different ways. This one's like really smooth and it just looks really cool as well. I do really like it. But then also, right, what you want to do is you want to swap it from to the high pass. So it's basically bypass everything below 120 hertz, and then you go into the out of the stock mode of like the previous settings of the old whatever it was trying to copy and all that stuff into the negative feedback NFB. Is that what it's? Yeah, it's called that. And I've put on this notes thing. It sort of sounds like the LA-2A, but less bright and sharp. I mean the Teletronics LA-2A. It's got more sheen, but even more top end. So it's kind of like this weird kind of like it rounds out some of those sibilant stuff that you would usually get rid of anyway. So I thought it was really, really good. And then there's more focus and saturation on the mids as well in the NF negative feedback, kind of driving the transformers a bit harder, I think. I think that's what it does, I don't know. It just sounds more together and nothing sounds bad across the board. I've done loads of tests and stuff like that and whatever, but I'm mainly focusing on vocals because they're always like complex and stuff and like gritty and polyphonic and things, and there's lots going on. So if you can upscale that, everything else is like, I know what it's going to do across the board usually. But I think you can get 2 different tones out of this, which is why I like it. And it's like 3.3k pounds, which is like way cheaper than kind of an LA-2A. And I also think it does more than an LA-2A. And the very new compression itself actually doesn't spit out some of the S's and T's, which you can't control on the Teletronics the way I can anyway. I also think the 1176 with all the buttons and knobs and stuff doesn't come close to this. But I was comparing this against an old 25-year-old Tube Tech, which I think is the best thing I've ever heard. And again, the new Tube Techs give over. They might be all right, and I'm not slagging off Tube Tech, whatever, right? The noise floor might be wonderful. But in my opinion, my humble opinion, this thing, I think it's class. I think it sounds really, really good. It's going to sound good on things you want that sound thin or a bit small. You can make them sound cleaner and bigger and brighter and polished, or you can saturate them and have this really kind of natural compression going on. And I just think it's class. I don't think I'm going to be able to talk about anything else in the same way that I can talk about this thing, which is my number 1. This thing, which is my number 2 because it's musical and I love it, which is the AUDIOSCAPE XL-305 Reverb Spring whatever. It just sounds cool and it's funky and it's kind of like, you know, like sound toys when you play around with all that kind of stuff. It kind of does the same thing in that you have something to play with that's like always fun. But this is like musical as well, so you can EQ that out. Like if you get rid of some of that misty stuff in the middle for reverbs, it's just well thought out, and it sounds good. And like I said, the decay is perfect. It goes gone. It's just perfect. And then this is my 3rd favourite, the DA-3A. I don't even know if it's, I think it's called the DA-3A. I mean, it might say it on it somewhere. Anyway, this just always sounds bigger. It always sounds a bit wider, but also together at the same time. It has more body and sustain, and generally feels like the acoustic guitars are a bit bigger. It's got a touch more upscaling, which, if you know what I'm saying, it might sound like I'm being a bit ridiculous, but basically what it does, guitars go forward, and they get a bit more transient, and you can put a bit more compression if you want it. But I'm mainly talking about tonal characteristics and not like how good the compression is or whatever. That has good compression, and I use it all the time on electric guitars and stuff like that. So I think if you get like 3 to 5 dB compression on your electric guitars in the box, UAD, that's the one. Go for this one and try it in the studio. And also it's a pair, like literally they're linked, and they've got like this thing where you can kind of balance the stereo image as well, which is useful. So they've actually thought of those things, which I think is really cool.